welcome everyone to our panel to discuss drilling automation technology applications to geothermal. My name is Ryan Rhodes. I'm a senior staff drilling engineer working at Oxy. Thanks, first of all, to Project Interspace and Pivot for hosting this panel today. We're really excited about the topic. A little bit about myself. I'm a drilling engineer with experience drilling in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. I've got about 9 years of experience drilling, and in that time, I've seen what drilling automation and rig automation can do to improve cycle times, on-bottom performance, and a lot of the topics that we'll be talking about. We've seen about a three times or more improvement in cycle times in my time at Oxy and previously Anadarko in Colorado. So briefly want to mention that our team at Oxy was recently awarded a DOE grant for drilling ROP demonstration and improving ROP in geothermal applications. So we're really excited about that. That's kind of what brings me here today. So as mentioned, we're here to discuss rig automation technologies, and we've got four, we had intended to have four people here. Tony Pink unfortunately had a last minute personal issue that he needed to take care of, but we've got the three remaining panel members here that are here to talk about this topic. So first off, I'll hand off to Chris Miller for an introduction.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's good to be here. So I'm Chris Miller with Helmerich and Payne. H&P is a leading oil and gas drilling contractor, and now we are getting more and more into what we call next generation geothermal. So in the oil and gas space, we have about 150 rigs working in the US today. One of those rigs is a geothermal rig, so we can talk a little bit about that, I hope. But we have international operations as well. And I'm the director of H&P Ventures. So on the venture side, our mission is to connect our drilling expertise to new energy technologies. And so to that end, what we've done in the past couple of years is we've created strategic partnerships with several different geothermal companies. Part of that is an equity investment, but part of that is also operational. And we've started forging these relationships and working alongside these companies so that we can help them develop this next generation of geothermal energy. That's what we're working on. We have one rig, like I said, one rig running today for Fervo Energy as we speak in Utah, and we're really excited about that partnership. So excited about the discussion, and we can talk more about that. Thanks, Ryan.
That's great. Yeah, thanks a lot, Chris. That's exciting stuff. Over to Tamás, Csrefkó.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and thanks for having me in this panel today. So my name is Tamás Csrefkó, and I'm with Nabors Drilling. Nabors is a leading provider of advanced technology for the energy industry, and us, by leveraging our competencies, particularly in drilling, engineering, automation, data science, and manufacturing, Nabors aims to innovate the future of energy and enable transition to a lower carbon world. And as part of that, we also made some investments in the geothermal space in the last couple of years, and also we have more than 3 decades of history in geothermal. And my background is I'm a petroleum engineer by degree, and I'm part of the energy transition group here with Nabors Drilling, and happy to be here and excited about the topics today. So I will hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Tamás. And finally, Silviu.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Project Interspace, for inviting me to this panel with my distinguished panelists. This is my third pivot, and I'm very excited to be here again. About myself, long history in oil and gas. I started with ExxonMobil as a research scientist, and then, excuse me, and then I was the chief scientist for the pressure pumping product line at Baker Hughes. 39 US patents, and I lost track of how many international patents related to, pretty much everything that you can think in oil and gas. And then in about 2020, I started my journey in geothermal. Now I'm full-time in geothermal. I'm at the University of Texas at Austin, but I'm also a co-founder of Bedrock Energy, which is a geothermal cooling and heating startup. And we are targeting decarbonizing of large buildings. And I'm very excited to talk about all these things. One more thing about myself, I'm on the SP board of directors as the data science and engineering analytics technical director. And last year, with John Borden at the time, SP staff, we proposed to the SP board for the very first time to apply for funding for DOE funding. And so together with Project Inner Space, thanks again to Jamie for initiating this effort and Geothermal Rising, we got awarded the Geology project that maybe many of you heard about it, and I'm very excited to talk about it a little bit today. Thank you again.
Yeah, great. Sounds good. Thanks, Silviu. So it's no surprise, and it's well known that geothermal drilling in particular faces many of the same challenges that the oil and gas industry has faced and still faces over the years, both technically from maintaining BHAs downhole, bit life, ROP enhancements, as well as how that affects the economics of the well. So the question today, essentially the overarching question of the panel, is how can automation technologies address those in geothermal applications? So to kick things off, the first question I want to ask is, why is drilling automation needed in the geothermal space to solve these problems? So I guess first person I'll ask that question to is Chris.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's important to take a step back and look at the context of where we are with geothermal. The US produces more geothermal power than any other country in the world, but it's only 0.4% of our current electricity grid. So we have a long way to go to make geothermal a very significant part of the energy mix in the US and also around the world. So you combine that with the fact that the Biden administration has called for 100% carbon-free electricity by 2035. And then the Department of Energy recently called for a reduction in enhanced geothermal production costs by 90%. So the challenges are laid before us. We have a long way to go with geothermal. And when we look at all those challenges, one answer to the challenge is automation. So at H&P, we're excited about this because we've been developing a suite of automation technologies over the last several years. And we've been doing this in oil and gas. And now we can start applying these things to geothermal. So we have a bit guidance system, software. It's basically a remote directional driller. We have auto slide, we have survey management, and a lot of other options that operators can choose from to automate more and more of the drilling process. So to me, I think the big theme when it comes to automation and drilling, especially in geothermal, is we have to move from art to science. A lot of the conventional geothermal was, it's very antiquated. So we have to move from this art where you hire an expert and you hope they know what they're doing to more of a data-driven approach and leveraging these technologies, and of course overseeing all that with good human expertise.
Yeah, I like that a lot, Chris. And it's funny, I'm not old enough to know, but I can imagine that that's kind of what the oil and gas industry had done, is go from art to science. Certainly, we are massively science-based in that wing of our of the business. So, Tamás, do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, and I agree with Chris. We do have a long way to go, especially when we're looking into these new geothermal technologies coming out and rising. So I think there's as many technologies, automation is no different. Also can be adopted from oil and gas to geothermal for the exact same reasons we started to develop it to oil and gas here with Nabors as well. So I think the most important is we want to lower costs to have the wide scale commercial development of these technologies, and automation allows to drill predictable sections with low time variation, lowering the cost per well, which will help you in these aspects. And also it brings consistency and with being effective, which is key to drill the same wells without error in the repetitive tasks. And not to mention, the precision is also important when we need to find the right formation or following the faults that we would like to target. And as well, the intersecting wells, which is coming out in some of the geothermal technologies, precision is key. So with the latest programmable rigs that can able to adopt these different geothermal well parameters as well, I think the software being rig agnostic helps with the scaling to put it not just only on our rigs, but other drilling rigs as well. And automation has proven track record of safely reducing these unplanned trips and overall improve the well ROP while drilling. So the combination of the automation and robotics nowadays, I think, also brings up another aspect which is tied to safety. That now you're not only removing people from the red zones and from suspended loads, but you also can remove people from the hot surfaces and hot areas in the rig too. So I think the rig automation will be key in the future for geothermal developments.
Yeah, that's a great point on safety. And if we have time, maybe we'll come more to that topic. But Silviu, anything else to add? I know you kind of have a unique perspective on the topic of why would we need drilling automation here.
Yes, thank you for that, Chris. So I agree with everything said earlier, but I would like to spin it a little bit differently, right? So two comments I have here. So first of all, I heard Chris saying about geothermal power, and so for geothermal heating and cooling, it's exactly the same situation, right? So if we are talking about all the large buildings in the United States, we are talking here about an easy 20-30% CO2 emissions reduction. And so it's a massive market, very little innovation, a lot of art, very little science. But what I would like to add actually from what Chris commented earlier is that we also need field implementation. So art, science, but then field implementation. And here is actually the difference between oil and gas and geothermal. In oil and gas, it's a massive industry with a lot of revenue for all these companies, a lot of innovation, a lot of people working. But the time scale, although we feel it in oil and gas very fast, is actually very slow. And so I want all of us to step back a little bit and think about how innovation in geothermal is going to work. If we are going to try exactly the same mindset we have in oil and gas, probably this is not going to make it in a meaningful time. So technologies are great. Knowledge is great that we need to take from oil and gas, but what we really need is disruptive innovation, disruptive business models that will, bring that knowledge, bring that technologies available in oil and gas, and find ways to work differently. Because the business models in geothermal, both for power and heating and cooling applications, are going to be different than the business models we have in oil and gas. Thank you.
Point. I mean, the scalability of it, right? I mean, when we talk about in oil and gas, 50,000+ wells being drilled per year, there's a lot of opportunity to try things out and test things. There's a lot of drive economically to make these things happen, whereas the scale currently in geothermal is substantially less, right? So you bring up a great point of application, and I think that kind of leads to a good follow-up question. We've got two, rig operators here that can kind of answer this question. And Chris mentioned already on Fervo's rig in Utah. Do you guys have any current examples of where you've implemented some of your different rig automation technologies into existing or recently drilled projects? Yeah, go ahead and start, Chris.
Yes. So I think one interesting stat that I came across a few days ago was the success rate for drilling geothermal wells in the U.S. was roughly 2 out of 3 were successful, and that was that's conventional geothermal. That's where oil and gas was 20 or 30 years ago, and now the success rate of oil and gas wells is roughly 100%. So that is due to these horizontal drilling advancements and also automation technologies as well. So as far as an example that I could present, we have an automation technology called H&P survey management. And basically the idea is there's no GPS underground for drilling. So how are we going to drill more accurate well bores? When you're drilling, there's an ellipse of uncertainty. and we need to reduce that ellipse somehow. So at H&P, one of our automation technologies is survey management, where we have proprietary magnetic models and automation software, and we can in real time correct the surveys coming from the rig and reduce that ellipse of uncertainty so the well bores can be drilled more accurately. So when we're talking about Fervo and they have a EGS concept, those well bores have to be placed correctly the first time, and especially on a pilot project. So we drilled their pilot project in Nevada last year, and we implemented H&P survey management in the process of drilling this project, and we saw good success with survey management. It really added a lot of value to the whole process, and the results were something that Fervo was really proud of, and they've released those results publicly. So that's one example, one piece of the automation puzzle that we used in an EGS drilling context. But there are other examples too, but I'll stop there.
Okay, yeah, Tamás, do you have any examples of either things that are currently in the works or have been used and kind of case studies?
Yeah, so what I know as the most recent, we probably all heard about the Utah Forge project, which actually used one of our patented automated pipe oscillating software, increasing the rate of penetration while delivering the ideal weight on bid. So what we heard from that operation, that was a good success, and the crew liked to use our software there, which is also tied to our smart suite and smart products. So that was a good feedback what we got from that project.
Okay, so and it's just kind of good timing. There's a question from the audience that kind of talks about how to transition some of these technologies from oil and gas to geothermal because of the cost sensitivity of geothermal. It's oftentimes maybe not looked at as a crossover possibility because it's just cost prohibitive. And I guess, again, I'll kind of ask Chris and Tamás. I think a lot about some of the technologies, whether it's the auto drillers, the oscillating, the auto slides, a lot of those things. Once those are developed and you've kind of spent the sunk cost on getting those things developed, what is the limitation to offering those on a rig that's going to be drilling a geothermal well, and how do you make that kind of cost effective to a more cost sensitive market?
I can pitch in on that. I think that is a good point. There are challenges with the costs. There are creative ways, especially when we're dealing with this emerging world of next generation geothermal, and we're dealing with startups. I think that's where kind of the ventures group can help craft different ways of investing in these companies, and perhaps doing in-kind investments and ways to reduce the cost, or at least make the cost more palatable for these companies, make the cost and the technology suite work for them and for what their operations are and for what their limitations are. So it is a tough thing, but it's being done, and there are, I think what we're attempting to do at H&P is work with these startups on an individual basis, understand what their needs are, and kind of tailor our strategic partnership to that. And so that can include throwing in technology and other things as needed, and making the offering work for them, and not having a cookie cutter approach.
Okay, yeah, that's any other comments to add to that, Tamás?
Yes, I think that those are excellent points, and sometimes it's like when you look into the cost and how you can help even our partners or partnering with other companies as well. I think the software application is there, but sometimes you need to tailor it or custom tailor it for these different applications. So it could be power generation, it could be direct use. So whatever that the end goal will be, that we need to tailor these wells and how we drill these wells in the most efficient way. And I think sometimes the challenge will be to have the tools and instrumentations downhole and the surface to withstand like these harsh conditions which geothermal presents. So I think the softwares and the AIs will behave and execute based on the incoming data feeding them. So if we have the tools and the instrumentation withstand these conditions, that we can be more tailored for the geothermal applications for sure.
Great. I don't want to leave you out here, Silviu, in the conversation. Has anything popped into your mind that, you know, is either answering some of these questions or follow up that you want to add?
Yeah. So, you know, thinking back about what I did at Baker Hughes, so pressure pumping, cold tubing, and then in 2018 we got the best technology award, World Oil Award for cold tubing automation, right? And so thinking about that and reflecting over the last 5 years where we are now, I realized that it's such a big problem to solve, right? So what I would suggest actually for all our companies involved in, you know, drilling and drilling automation would be actually to, first of all, to partner, just like Chris said earlier, with startups, with operators, with whoever is interested actually to build the capability. But then in addition to what Tamás said, to break down a very complex problem to smaller pieces and then to try to solve one at a time. So if you are talking only about, you know, data analytics for, you know, vibrations or for slip, for whatever, you know, downhole conditions, then you have to focus only on that and get very good at it. And whatever else you cannot focus on, then partner with somebody else who is also the best at that, right? If we are talking about automated rigs, then again, somebody has to do that very, very well, and then leave the downhole part to somebody else. And so I believe only these kind of partnerships are going to make it, you know, in a meaningful time. And I'm very happy actually to elaborate more if I have time.
No, that's great. Yeah, so I guess piggybacking on that, another question that came in that I like the question is, can you guys cite an example? Do you have an example of an automation method or, you know, implementation that has not yet been tried in geothermal that, you know, has worked in oil and gas application that you think is like, this is where we need to try this next. This is going to make a big difference. Anything that comes to mind there?
I would say that almost all from H&P perspective, almost all the technologies that we're using in oil and gas have not been tried in geothermal. It's so early. So, you know, there are a few examples that I can give, but, you know, for the most part, this space is wide open. So I think, you know, going forward, what we see a lot of promise in, you know, another example would be our bit guidance system. So it's a remote directional drilling technology. So depending on what the geothermal application is, you know, we're able to leverage that potentially, and that's something that hasn't been fully implemented in geothermal in the past. So that I think that's one example when we're talking about drilling either EGS systems or closed loop systems, having that data-driven approach where you're cutting out the guesswork, especially in directional drilling. You know, also kind of on top of that platform is our auto slide platform as well. So these all create more efficiencies and create more high quality wellbores, and the space is wide open. It is very early.
So Chris, would you and others on the panel, would you guys say, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning though that there's oftentimes a lot of pushback to these technologies in the oil and gas space as well. I mean, it's, you know, we talk about all the advancements that have been made in oil and gas industry, and yet, you know, there's a lot of pushback to let's just keep doing it the way we've done it with the same number of people on location, and that, you know, the DD thinks he can do it better than the computer can. And so while we talk about these technologies being, you know, revolutionizing the oil and gas space, and in many ways, some of them have, but in many ways, some of them are still relatively new and haven't had a whole lot of opportunity for implementation, even in oil and gas. So I almost look at geothermal as potentially being, you know, yet another, it could be a case study that gets shown to the oil and gas industry that, hey, you know, we had some seed money that we were willing to try something over here, and it worked great. You guys ought to be looking at this in the 10,000 wells that you're drilling over here. So any reaction to that comment?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree what you just said, and I think there are multiple applications out there today. What we can use, of course, depending on what type of geothermal that you are targeting, and there might be some out there I'm not aware of that being developed. But what today can be used is the drilling process automation, like directional guiding system, sliding steering. If you're thinking about MPD and as well mitigating and managing temperature as well, I think that's going to be something very important in geothermal. And we're talking about stick slips and weight on bit and increasing the ROP. So these high performance automation products are already out there, which also we have it in our portfolio. But of course, that has to be enough information to gather these being used in the field in the geothermal perspective that we can fine tune these or make something and develop something totally new.
Great.
Yeah,
Silviu,
Ryan, I would like to add a little bit to this one. So your question was which technologies developed in oil and gas have been or haven't been applied to geothermal, right? And talking about heating and cooling, applications, it's absolutely no automation. Everything currently it's done manually and it's art, just like Chris said earlier. And more than that, there is no data collection whatsoever, no data acquisition, even after a job is done to analyze and find patterns and learn from that. So everything is really manual, everything is an art, and it's just ripe for disruption, right? So an absolute amazing, time, a massive market, and everybody who will come with whatever innovation will make a mark.
Yeah, that's a great comment. So, some other questions that are coming in, and I think it's something that maybe is a concern when you hear the word automation, right? Is that somebody's job that's being automated out of the process? And so we can talk about that. It comes in the context of directional drilling. It comes in the context of perhaps remote MWD services and how that can work. And then of course it comes in the context of handling, pipe handling and auto, derrick hands and all that kind of stuff. So any comments on how do you guys see that moving forward? What's the balance between having a workforce that is employed in the US and abroad and with employing these automation technologies?
That's great, Ryan. And if I can take that first. So what we've seen, and we got these questions as well when we started to roll out our robotic rig. Like, so what's going to happen now is, like, you guys don't need that many people on the rig floor. So what will happen? So we shifted that workforce. We kept the same amount of people, but we basically, what we did, we repurposed those people so they can focus on more important jobs on the rig, and they can take upon on different other tasks than being involved in these repetitive tasks which they would do otherwise. So this technology helps to refocus the people and shift the workload in a different direction. But we wanted to keep the same amount of people on the rig for sure.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it from the H&P perspective, it hasn't eliminated jobs. It's made those jobs higher quality, safer, given the employees a higher quality of life, keeping them out of danger zones more, and allowing them to kind of guide the technology and oversee it instead of, being in manually labor-intensive tasks that are higher risk. So from our experience so far, it's a shifting of the responsibilities. It's not an eliminating of jobs.
Exactly.
And if I may, there's a little bit more to that. So, I agree. It's a shifting of jobs, but if we are talking about a meaningful scaling up of geothermal industry, of a new geothermal industry, we will need way more people than we have right now. So actually, not only we don't eliminate jobs, but we will need to significantly increase the number of jobs with new skills, sure. But I predict a massive, scaling up of workforce and training as well.
Yeah, I guess, and that kind of spurs a question that comes to my mind is, when I think about opportunity for geothermal, I think a lot about, okay, when there's a field that's starting to kind of, reach the twilight years, and obviously in oil and gas, they're always hoping for the next big play. But, as those things happen, I potentially see an opportunity for, the people who are currently identified as oil and gas workers on, out on operations, having the opportunity to, if that rig gets remobilized to, a geothermal pad, that, yeah, there may be some additional training that's required, but they already probably have 80% of the base skill set needed to do the work required. So I guess if you want to piggyback on that comment, that'd be great, guys. But the other thing that was mentioned, and I'll bring it up, is there anything particular to the existing rig fleet that needs to be done to be able to drill for the deep, super hot stuff that is being proposed at this point? So kind of maybe tie those two things together about, rig capabilities and workforce, flexibility.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it, Ryan. I just want to add to your comment that maybe a lot of people don't know, but it's have a 7-to-1 knock for knock effect actually when in a local economy, when you're putting the drilling rig somewhere new areas. So that's repurposing that workforce and providing jobs in the area with geothermal. I think that's a great opportunity, but also taking that a little further when we're talking about geothermal anywhere and repurposing different power plants, that basically you can repurpose that workforce from that power plant as well. And also because now you're just changing basically the energy source powering that power plant, and the same people can run the rest of the facility. So I think that's another aspect that geothermal is great. And for the rigs, I think when you're talking about adoption, that a lot of these rigs, that especially the new ones, we call them smart rigs, are able to adopt for this technology for automation. Some rigs might need some either surface equipment modifications or software upgrades, but I think the latest fleet is capable to adapt to drilling automation. This is what we've seen when we're rolling out, not just only for Nabors rig, but others too.
Yeah.
And from a standpoint, particularly, I'll just follow up real briefly, Tamás, like any concern. I mean, sometimes we talk about, super deep, super hot. Is there, you've got the hook load capacities needed, you've got the equipment for managing that.
For the super hot temperatures?
Yeah, for high temperature and deep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when you look at it, I guess that you need to choose the equipment that you would like to use. And especially when we're thinking about downhole tools, most of these downhole tools are not surviving in the conditions above 350 F. So that needs to come with, like, let's say, continuous circulation, so you can mitigate this temperature, and you can keep your downhole tools cool, so you can use them and you can extend their life as well. So I think automation comes into play on that perspective too. And when you're thinking about these sensors has to be in surface in conditions too, that you actually can use those. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anything to add there, Chris, on your guys' rig capability?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think the beauty of where we are right now is we can apply all these technological gains in oil and gas to geothermal. So we have the capacity to do a lot. I mean, it depends on what the project is and how hot we're going and how deep we're going. But as far as what companies are talking about right now and what's in the near term, we're able to use our existing fleet to accomplish their goals. So I'm sure, yeah, I agree. There's gonna need to be advancements downhole as far as bit life and sensors and things like that, withstanding higher temperatures. But we can accomplish a lot by catching the geothermal industry up with where we already are today.
Great. Okay. Well, we have about 5 minutes left, guys. So I'm gonna ask one more question. It's kind of going to be a little bit of a loaded big question, so you can answer it however you want. But so I guess looking forward, looking in your crystal ball for the next 5 to 10 years, how can drilling automation, what we've been talking about today, how can it be applied to transform, so to speak, the geothermal industry? And what would be the biggest challenge, the biggest thing that needs to be overcome in order to make that a reality? And I'll start with you, Silviu, and take as much time as you'd like.
All right. So, so I wanted to make this comment earlier, but thank you for giving it the floor now. So, what I like about Chris's last comment, it's parallelism. So, what I learned as a startup from, with coming from the tech industry, is that if we are focusing in oil and gas for the biggest, problems that can solve all our issues, like power generation, for instance, geothermal power generation, right? It's going to be years away. And then it's very, very hard actually to get enough investment to get there if we are not having, intermediate results to show that it's a business case to make money for oil and gas companies into geothermal power. So what I really like is parallelism, in which we develop technologies, for that vision of being 10 years with geothermal everywhere. But at the same time, take the oil and gas technologies, take the oil and gas knowledge, and pick up the lowest hanging fruits, right? So to me, actually, there are a lot of those for power generation, for direct heating and cooling applications, absolutely, a lot of them. But parallelism is the key here, right? So have the vision to invest in, long-term technology development and field applications, and focus today on whatever lowest hanging fruits you see to prove that geothermal can be scaled up with existing oil and gas technologies.
That's a great comment. Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll just go to Chris. What's your thoughts on the future and hurdles that need to be overcome?
Yeah, we're really excited about the future. I think a big hurdle is these companies obtaining the capital they need to really keep growing and proving out their technologies and then starting to scale. So I think the capital piece is a challenge, and there's going to need to be more players that come off the sidelines, hopefully in oil and gas, to help these companies grow and scale and develop their technologies. So at H&P, we're really focused on continuing to forge these partnerships, and we're proud of the fact that we believe that we have this drilling expertise and technology to bring to the table to help create this entirely new market of next generation geothermal.
Tamás?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's hard to tell what will be in the next 5 years, but I think the hope is that we will see the same trend what we've seen in the oil and gas, where we started to apply automation and also taking learnings from the unconventional space, and as well customize the drilling rigs for geothermal. And I think there is no one fits all as of today, just because of there are these developments are in the early stages, or the startup companies needing these projects to be developed enough that we can see where we're going with this geothermal journey. And I think collaboration is key. And I think a lot of us being involved in different applications or consortiums, or talking with universities, research institutes, oil and gas companies, I think collaboration will be key, and being open-minded to get away from some of the older oil and gas practices. For example, you might don't need, some of those equipments, what the old mentality will require. So I think the ultimate goal would be to lower the cost for the wide scale commercial deployments and helping these companies to accelerate.
Well, I appreciate it, Tamás. I know I promised everyone a couple minutes to wrap up, but I hope that those statements kind of act as some closing comments, some optimism, I think, for the future. Definitely some economic challenges, but I think it's exciting to see where the things will go. Thanks again to everyone on the panel. Thanks to Project Interspace and Pivot for hosting this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.